Hey there! Welcome to my first video on this channel and footage of what my kitchen used to look like. Maybe the word messy is an understatement, but we're gonna make this far less of an eyesore over the course of this video. We're gonna be taking these weirdly green walls, dated 90s vibe with the orangey oak cabinets, and borderline biohazardous clutter into something more presentable and functional. I wanted to give the space an airier, more spacious vibe with a new coat of paint, so I started prepping the area by decluttering the countertops in order to clear the space and give myself a cleaner area to work in. Next, I removed all of the light switch panels. I continued to prep the space by removing wall hangings, most of which included thumbtacks. After that, I filled in the leftover holes with joint compound, which was super easy to work with and a surprisingly relaxing experience. Now let me tell you, some of the grease stains on this kitchen have been here for probably over a decade. I tried to get as much of it off as possible with magic erasers and water, and it wasn't perfect, but that didn't seem to cause any trouble while painting the walls.
Ooh, baby's first drop cloth. Oh, it smells.
I wanted to lighten and brighten up the space with some coats of satin finish, slightly warm-toned white paint.
Dope. I didn't have a paint stirrer, so I'm just using some disposable chopsticks from like the various takeaway that I've consumed during quarantine. So, ooh, viscous.
I ended up using one coat of primer with 2 or 3 coats of the satin finish paint.
Hasn't even been 1 second yet, and I've already gotten paint on me. Here we go.
If I could go back, I'd probably get a primer and paint all in one, or spend more time making the primer layer more even, because that would have made the other coats turn out a bit cleaner, but overall it was a good experience and arm workout. Ha 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 ha, tried to ignore my crop top being too good at its job, but I tackled the blinds next. I thought about replacing them with some more modern paper hexagon cell shades, but I ended up liking how open the plain window made the space, so I left it that way. It was my first time really manipulating a space to this extent, and they actually came off a lot easier than I expected. These garden door blinds were super dated and dirty, and they should have been cleaned or replaced 15 years ago, but I followed the same process that I used for the window and blinds you saw previously. I took off the protective panel and used a screwdriver to bend and loosen the metal bits that were holding the blinds in place to a point where I could slide out the blinds. Then I removed the brackets to clean up the space. I didn't plan on completely removing it at the beginning of my renovation, but I just kind of went with the flow of things and let the space speak to me on what it needed after each step. You are about to see some really, really nasty footage. Years of cooking stuff and whatever such grime stuck on these poor cabinets, so I spent a lot of time scrubbing as much of it off as I could, but I actually found a way more effective way of getting caked on stuff off kitchen cabinets that you'll see later. So, yeah, leave the alcohol wipes for other stuff. Oh yeah, and while I was removing the cabinet doors, this happened.
Okay. There's chili oil on it.
So yeah, professional stuff going on here, folks. So after that mishap, I was really wary of my screws and took off all the remaining cabinet doors.
Welcome to how messy my garage is.
Here's the cleaning solution that I mentioned earlier that uses what you probably already have at home. I found that baking soda and water with the rough side of a kitchen sponge is really effective at getting stains off. In this first cutaway, you can see a close-up of what this door looked like before and then what it looked like after the baking soda. It was super effective, inexpensive, and didn't seem to damage my doors at all, so I highly recommend it. Oh boy, the most time-consuming part of this entire process was definitely sanding, since I needed to remove as much of the pre-existing varnish as possible to stain raw wood. Each door probably took about 30 minutes each to get most of the varnish off with a palm sander, followed by hand sanding the curved areas, and a few hours to sand the cabinet frames down. Like I said, it took forever, but my palm sander will definitely have a special place in my heart as my first power tool. I had planned on doing this entire project on my own, but luckily my dad came along and insisted on helping me out for the remainder of this process. I definitely recommend having an extra pair of hands for a project this big because the constant sanding might drive you crazy if you're by yourself the whole time.
She's dripping. I should have gotten gloves. Didn't think this through, huh, Kimbo? Apparently I'm bigger brain than I thought.
My dad had this big brain idea of hanging the doors from our balcony so we could stain them all in one go. Because who has the patience to lay all the doors on the floor, stain one side, wait for it to dry, flip it over, and repeat for multiple coats and a billion doors? Not us. Innovation, baby. I chose a water-based, oil-modified penetrating stain in the shade Jocko Bean because it was the perfect color that matched our pre-existing dining room table, and we followed up with 3 coats of water-based polyurethane in a satin finish.
Y'all, this color. Ooh. Wow. Wow. Hello. Come here.
I'd never worked with lighting or electrical stuff before, aside from, like hanging fairy lights, but was really pumped to have my dad teach me some electrical basics to replace this dated ceiling fan with something more modern.
I can do it.
Yeah. Ooh.
My dad and I then spent a few hours re-hanging up the cabinet doors with some new hanging hardware in a steel color to match the other metals in the space. Since my family has a lot of belongings and this is a shared space, I thought that an IKEA calyx would be an effective extra storage solution for the time being before we eventually do a major Marie Kondo on the space. You've seen people build IKEA furniture before, so I won't bore you, but yeah, I am people. The calyx served as a nice catch-all for the items that were cluttering up the dining table and kitchen countertop, and I'll be getting some nice wicker baskets for the cubbies once they're restocked. I'll probably make another video on this space when we have time to declutter, upgrade the storage solutions, and make any necessary upgrades based off of how my family ends up using the space.
Where's my baby? Come, look. Oh my gosh. Look. See? See?
Even though it's a work in progress, I'm still beyond proud to see how far this space has come from where it started. Here's the finished look. I've never done anything like this before, so I'm super happy with how this project played out considering how messed up the space was at the start. My family's been through some really rough times these past few years, and I felt that it was really starting to physically manifest itself in our home, where our kitchen and dining room were also unable to function as everything kind of just spiraled out of control. And maybe this sounds cheesy, but it's nice to know that even after years of neglect, it's never too late to make things into something better, that all it takes is intent and effort on that intent to basically give you and your dreams a second life. And I'm glad I finally had enough control over my life to make this happen. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.